Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, I'm delighted to share with you the E24 BMW M6, one of the most beautiful and iconic cars from the 80s in my humble opinion, and it's powered by a 3.5-liter inline-6 with independent throttle bodies, the S38 B35. It's got about 250 horsepower, not a crazy track star in a straight line, but plenty potent to get the job done, and the character of this engine is so deliciously old school BMW. I can't think of a cooler looking car to show up to an event. It looks like a shark, it looks like the Batmobile. I'm just flabbergasted by how cool this is. And the wheels, the BBS wheels look fantastic. The lowered fascia on the rear, even the impact bumpers somehow look really good on this car. On the deck lid, we've got this great piece of rubber, kind of reminiscent of stuff that Porsche was doing at the time, especially with the turbos. And this car is in particularly phenomenal condition. It's really impressive. Inside, this is where we just get a great taste of 80s luxury. This is definitely aimed at the driver. Everything's angled a bit toward the driver, but these seats are incredibly supportive for cornering. And then there's electronics that you wouldn't expect. The layout of the seat controls, pretty bonkers, but surprisingly intuitive. We've got a 5-speed manual Getrag, and you'll notice that although this is a two-door, there are window switches for the rears because those rear windows roll down. In the back, even though there's not a ton of room back here, these are some cushy looking chairs, and it reminds me of the 8 Series later on to come in the 1990s. You can see where that 8 Series inspiration came from. And there's even climate control back here. This is wild. This is really cool stuff for the 1980s in a car that's probably more designed to have 2 people off to a weekend getaway rather than 4. But man, this is so cool. Tons of storage space for your stuff, no problems. And of course, if you're a BMW file, the first thing you do when you get into the trunk is you're gonna check for the toolkit. Does it have the toolkit? Yes, it does. We've even got a couple fuses here and all the things. A little BMW rag, good to have. But the real special gem in this car is under the hood. Now, what's really great is you don't just pop the hood, you kind of release this lever. It stays there because that's going to help us close the hood later. And then we have the forward opening hood with pistons, so that's high class stuff. We don't have to just hold it up ourselves. And then we've got our S38 power plant. This valve cover screams BMW M1. This is OG BMW M Power. This is wonderful, and it sounds unbelievable. I cannot wait to take you for a drive, and that's exactly what we're gonna go do. And to close the hood, we don't slam it down, we just lay it there, and then we'll use our lever, pop it back down, and we're good to go. To start, key in ignition, good to go. No clutch interlock, good neutral. Jumps right to life. Now, in old BMW style, we've got our check control unit. That way we can check to make sure that all of our warning lights are functional. We are good to go. A happy car. This one has 87,000 miles on it, and it shows. This is in phenomenal condition. Somebody obviously cared for it. And like I said, these rear windows go down. Not all the way, but low enough. Surprisingly quick, and I love the character of this engine because it really does just pull to redline and charge harder and harder. You're hearing a little bit of slop down here. That's just my phone and the door card, so don't be concerned. Definitely good fun. Like, 250 horsepower isn't a ton of power, but it really does get out of its own way. This is not slow, and it's so engaging with this great gearbox. Man, this is fun. This is a fun car to drive, but it's a fun car to engage with. You know, that's why these types of cars are going for such big money on auction sites like Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids, because what's happening is everything is so muted and dull these days, and BMW especially. I mean, God, they are making egregious violations to their former supporters, because what they're creating are these just vague, numb numbers cars. Sure, they get to 60 really quickly, but like, they're not very exciting. They don't sound particularly amazing. I'd put this car sort of on the level of a Porsche 944 in terms of how entertaining and cool it is to drive. Like, it may not be the fastest thing in the world, it may not have some exotic engine, but it sounds fantastic, it drives fantastic, and it's pretty luxurious as well. Like, you can do a nice trip in this car and be very cozy and comfortable. The steering, it's light but direct. It weights up mid-corner so nicely. Like, you really just feel everything. You feel so engaged with the car. And because this power plant, you know, it's not the highest revving engine, right? We're kind of around that 6,500 RPM red line. But that means it's got all this delicious torque, because you don't have to think too hard. You don't need to like slip that clutch to get it moving, right? Like, I can just kind of keep it at idle. There's such a marked change in the sound when you really go wide open throttle too. It's a long wheelbase, but it still tucks itself into a corner really well. It's surprisingly more rigid than I anticipated it being. I thought this was going to be slopping all over the place, but it's actually holding together really nicely. This is what we loved about BMW. This is why I love BMW. I got sucked into BMWs from the E34 540i M Sport. That was the car that changed my life, that made me want BMWs. And then I just became addicted to these inline sixes, and eventually got myself an M5 and an M3. I guess I strayed away from the straight sixes and went for the V8s. But, you know, those cars, even my E92, still has some of this DNA in there, and I am not feeling that. I drove the new M4 the other day, and I just, you know, it's a fine automobile, but it doesn't elicit the emotion that this does. And I feel like there's so much missing from it. Good little runner. That's what's great too. That this thing, because it's got this long wheelbase, it feels so stable at speed. I mean, I can picture just driving at 100 miles an hour for an hour and just cruising and enjoying the power, enjoying the vibe. This is smooth too. Suspension is soaking up everything. There's a tiny bit of play on center from the steering, but if anything, it kind of makes it more luxurious. Great visibility. Need to get used to that high clutch catch, but it's okay. You'll forgive me. what's great about this engine is that while there is enough low-end torque to make for a very easy, like, low-speed driving situation, there's not enough that you can just kind of punch it at 2,500 RPM and really go for it. So it rewards you winding it out. It wants to be kind of in that like 4,500 to 6,000 RPM power band. That's the spot. That's where it's really happy. But it doesn't mean that you can't nurse it around a corner at low speeds, feed a little throttle, and listen to that bassy, classic BMW sound. Brakes feel good too. Yeah, this is the right amount of power and speed for a fun weekender as well. Everything's so crazy fast today, like crazy fast. You get yourself in a significant amount of trouble in most cars at this point. Like this though, this rewards the correct entry speed. It rewards throttle control. It rewards weight balance. I mean, this is great. Sometimes you get in these older cars, even from the 80s, the late 80s, and they don't feel like they belong in modern society. They don't feel like they should be driving today. You feel a little scared. You feel like, ooh, I don't want to get hit in this. Now, I'm not like gonna say that I think the safety rating in this is gonna hold up against a new F-150, but what I can say is that I don't feel like a tiny speck in the road. I feel like it belongs. I feel like I could use this vehicle. I could actually drive this fairly regularly without, being afraid. I've got decent brakes, I've got adequate power, and more importantly, I've got a driving experience that doesn't exist in modern cars today. I think what I'm most pleasantly surprised with in this car, and it may just be because this is a great example of it, but it's tight as a drum. I think I've driven like early 2000s and later 2000s cars that feel like looser and more disheveled than this. This, you can kind of place it where you'd like, and you expect it to be a little roly-poly just because of the nature of a big GT coupe like this, but it's still direct, and you know exactly where it's going to go when you do place it, and it settles in so nicely. I should probably get in this interior and feel like, oh, can you believe the 80s? But like, this actually makes a lot of sense even today. Like, HVAC system, pretty normal controls. Radio, you turn it on, you turn it off. You've got your exterior temperature, it's 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, yeah, sure, it doesn't have Bluetooth, but I actually have all the information I would expect to get out of a car, and it's not some like fever dream of 80s insanity like if you get in a C4 Corvette. Thank you guys for coming along for a ride for the sights and sounds of a German 80s icon, a great driver's car, and something that I think really holds up today, especially as we start to see more and more, let's say, egregious designs coming from BMW. I haven't driven one yet, but the new 2 Series, really, it's killing me, okay? It's killing me. And sometimes it's important to go back in time and drive a hero car to remind you that you know, these cars are still out there. The brand was wonderful. And maybe they'll get reminded of this more often if they drove them more often and give us cars that we actually want. But until then, I guess we just have to preserve the ones we've got. Thank you to Bond Group for tossing me the keys to this M6. This is a really special drive. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's see, what do we have in Bond Group today? Always some cool cars in here.